Right, okay, so I'm going to get going. So welcome, first of all. Thank you very much for joining me for my third workshop in the Build a Better Business series. I think a few of you have been on some of my other workshops, so I've covered Build a Better Business in 90 minutes, and I've done the Do You Know the Score? And the reason for doing pricing for profit came from some research that I did speaking to business owners off the back of my last Build a Better Business workshop, and finding that quite a lot of people don't really understand their pricing and certainly haven't factored in profit. So I'm going to just ask you all to stay on mute while I talk so I don't get too distracted. And likewise, I won't look at the chat until the end, but feel free to pop questions in there. At the end of the workshop, which should be just under an hour, I will happily stop the screen share and have a look at all your lovely faces. And if you've got any questions, then I'll be more than happy to help you. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Angela Burgess. As you can see, my lovely photo from Tricia at Portrait Photography, which I have to say, she's done a pretty good job because I'm not sure I look completely like that in real life. But anyway, so I've been in business since I was 16. I left school and went straight to work. And I've just loved working ever since, loved business. At 28, when I was moved down to London, I became a co-director of a consultancy firm, and I was the finance director there. Now, just for transparency, I'm not an accountant and I'm not trying to pretend to be one, but I do have a pretty good understanding of numbers because it's something that I've been doing for a very long time. And then just over 16 years ago, I set up my own business where I was just the sole director, and that was in magazines. So I think quite a lot of you know me from the magazines. So I own SE Magazines, and I've got 3 publications, as you can see, and I print 15,000 copies every single month. So I've got a really, good understanding of what it is to run a business initially as a sole trader and then going into being a limited company. So I feel that I've got a reasonable grasp of all that. And then last year, I trained to be an Entrepreneurs Circle certified coach. And that's why I'm doing these workshops, because I'm now getting the opportunity to speak and to lots of lovely business owners and give them a bit of the benefit of the things that I've learned through my years in business, but also as the coach. So what to expect in the next hour? Excuse my whistling. I hope that after this hour, you're going to understand the principles of pricing. Make sure you know how to price your product or service, and how you can then do that to scale your business. Now, that might not be what some of you want to do, but there's some really interesting things that if you know that you want your business to be bigger, there's a few little different ways that you would do your pricing. And then hopefully you'll feel more confident that you'll be able to cover your costs and more. So pricing is one of the key drivers in making a decent profit. You'd think that would be really clear, that obviously if you get the right price and you've factored all the right things in, then you should make a profit, assuming that you are going to sell enough of those products or those services. But I found through my research that a lot of people weren't even thinking about this. And I think it's an element of some business owners become a business owner by accident. So they may have a hobby and they start doing, or a side hustle, and then they start going on and it gets better and it takes over. But they've never set out to do it as a business. So the price they sell at can be just because they want to cover how much it costs them, but they've not thought about their time and their costs involved. So if you've got a fantastic new product, beautiful bracelet there, or you want to offer an amazing service, potentially if you want to be a photographer, then the key question is, how on earth should you price it? You don't want to price it too high and then not attract any customers, although There's a lot of argument to say that there's plenty of products that we can buy. Remember when we go to a cafe and we buy a coffee at £1, and particularly if you live in London now and you buy a cappuccino, you'd be paying £3.90. There's not a huge amount of difference in the actual cost of that product, but the way we'll pay that because we've gone into maybe a nicer cafe and there's someone called a barista rather than someone serving you. So it's not necessarily pricing high is a bad thing, but you do need to know your potential customers. You then potentially don't want to have it too low because you don't want to look like you're sort of cheap or low quality. So you've got to consider that. Or worse still, and this is what I was finding with my research, is that you've priced it so low you can't even afford to pay for your mortgage. So, whatever your reason is for doing this business and whatever money you want to make from it, it's understanding what that is and making sure you've costed it appropriately. So let's have a look at the 4 influences on how to price your product or your service. There's many more, but these are the 4 C's, as I call them, and they're very well worth having a pen and paper and go back over this section and just go through the things that I'm just about to share with you. And actually, these slides will be available as a PDF if anyone would like them after, so don't feel like you've got to make too many notes if you don't want to. So the first one is cost, which obviously makes completely sense. Your competitors, your customers, and your company objectives. And I'm just going to go through each of those in a little bit of detail so you can understand where I'm coming from. So cost. Before you can price anything, you need to know how much it costs you to make. It seems obvious, but I have to say, I was finding again, people didn't know. So if you've got if you're making that beautiful bracelet, you've obviously got to buy the materials. So that would be, say, the silver, the jewels that will go in there, the solder. You may have had to get that shipped to you. All those, they're the costs that are directly related to making that product. It's a bit different with services, so I'm just going to concentrate a bit more on products at the moment because it's a bit easier to explain. But I'm really happy to have a look and talk through services afterwards because I obviously do that as a coach. Competitors, if you're going to sell something that's similar to someone else, then it's a good idea to at least know what other people are selling their product at. As a magazine owner, I'm really aware of what prices other people who have magazines, not necessarily just in my area, but it's a good idea to know what someone might be selling a full page at. But you have to factor in things like they might print more magazines than you, and that's why the price is higher. So you need to have a little bit more information, not just they sell it at that price and I need to do the same. Customers, how much will your customer be willing to pay for the product or service you are selling? So this is a really key thing. And again, you would think that it's obvious, but a lot of people don't really think about this. So do your research. Think about who your target client is and see where they're shopping and see what they're buying. Even better, test this out. Now, a lot of us tend to use our family to do things like this, but just remember your family might not be your target market and they may give you their ideas and their opinions and they might not really be relevant. So I think it's really good. I had a person that I spoke to a few months ago who did, she rented clothes out, in fact, and her target market was sort of the mums in the area that she lived in, which is in Blackheath. And I suggested that she did a research party so she could show them the products. And in a sense, she was also selling at the same time. But that was much better than going and speaking to a family, which half of which would never have been looking to rent the clothes and wouldn't have understood what she was trying to get through. So make sure you do that. You could, if you've got a local fair, if you've got that kind of product, you could do a small batch, get a store for fairly cheaply and go and test it out and see, are you a raging success? Did you sell out? Or you sat there with everything still left and nobody wants what you've got to sell? It's a really, really hard lesson. But if you find out that what you've got isn't something people want to buy, it is a lot better finding that sooner. And it doesn't mean that they'll never want to buy it. It means you've got something wrong. And it might be your price, and it just might be your message. So it's worth testing these things out. And a top tip is do a mini launch. So it could be like the fair, or as we find quite a lot now, people who are doing that memberships or subscriptions, they'll do a price for founder members. So you get these people locked in early doors, and you test stuff out on them, and you let them know that. So it's often referred as being in beta. So you're testing it out, and they're paying you, and hopefully they become really, really loyal customers of yours. So it's well worth having a look at some of these strategies. And then your company objectives. What is the aim as the business owner? Do you want to maximize sales by pricing low to beat your competition? Some people do this. It's not something I would want to do, but there can be very good reasons to do that. Are you looking to maximize profits as much as possible? So really putting a higher price on that. But you've obviously got to have something that has got the value that you can do that with. And then have you got a target profit that you need to pay the bills? So quite often you may look at doing your pricing based on what you need. And then you try and fit everything in around that. And it's not a bad idea to have an idea of what you want. But I'm going to go through that a little bit more detail. So this is the starting point of your pricing strategy. So how should you price your product or service? It's essential, as I say, to know how much it costs to make or provide your product. You need to gather all that information together. So if you're selling a widget, how much did it cost? How much did it cost to get to you? Not just how much they're selling it for. Include shipping. If you're getting something from abroad, you need to make sure you factor in any customs costs, things like that. So make sure you include all those, anything that is directly related to making or selling that product. So then you need to look at your fixed costs, often called overheads. So this could be, I think I'm going into that in a little bit actually. I'm going to go through that in a little bit more detail. So basically, once you get to the point where you know what all your costs are and you've projected how many sales, you then need to find out how many things you need to sell to cover your costs. And I will go into that in a little bit more detail. But we don't just want to break even, do we? God, no, we want to make a profit. We don't want to slog hard and just sell things and not make any money at the end of it. So we want to be winning live. So how do you set your prices? There's lots of different pricing strategies, but I'm going to concentrate on the cost-based markup pricing strategy. It's the most used one, and it's a good starting point, particularly for sole traders. It's a bit more straightforward, but it's by no means the only way that you can do your pricing strategy. So what will you need? You'll need to calculate your costs. You'll need to forecast how many sales you will make. You've then got to calculate your break even, excuse me. You need to add your profit on. This is the bit that most people forget to do. And then you finally can calculate your sales price. So I'm going to go through those in a bit more detail. So number one, you can estimate your direct costs per product linked directly to making the product, i.e. the materials. So if you're making a wooden table, that would be the wood that you use before you've made the table. Anything that you need to glue it together, nails, glue, anything related to that table. So the way I look at the direct costs are, if I'm not making a sale, I'm not spending that money. Okay, so if I was not selling adverts in my magazine, I wouldn't be printing a magazine. So therefore my print and my distribution costs would not be there. So it's anything that is directly related. We then go into estimating your annual indirect fixed costs, often called overheads. And this is so if you're renting the premises, obviously you need the power, you need a phone, internet, potentially staff, insurance, all the things. And in fact, I should have put in there an accountant, because this is definitely something I think a lot of sole traders don't do soon enough. And a good accountant can really, really help you get your pricing right, and check these things with you. So it's very well worth having a look at one sooner rather than later. You then forecast how many sales you will make. So a forecast, it can be a bit of a finger in the air, but you've got to have some idea of what you think you're going to sell. So for instance, as a coach, I'm not going to think I'm going to sell. Oh, sorry, that was a noise. I'm not going to be selling, I don't want 100 clients, because I would not be able to service 100 clients. If you're making a wooden table and it takes you 4 weeks to make one, then there's only 12 that you can make in a year. So it would be crazy to have your forecast of 100. So just to make sure it makes sense. And these things can be changed. So you've got to have a look. You're probably going to have to play around with these things a little bit so you can start to understand where your prices are at and how much you will need to sell. So start with a figure. Then you're going to multiply the number of sales by your direct cost per product. Then after that, you're going to add the total annual cost to get your total costs, and then you should be able to calculate your break-even point. So how I do that, again, I'm just going to refer to my magazines because it's just something that obviously I've been doing for a long time. So if I'm printing a 36-page magazine, I would look to sell 18 pages for advertising. So I do a 50-50 revenue pages versus editorial. There's a cost to print a 36-page magazine, and there's a cost to distribute it. So the distribution and print costs are above the line, which are my direct costs. And I will also put my designer who freelances for me in there as well, because if I'm not producing a magazine, I won't be using him. So that's what I do. And then that will give me a figure. So I know that I can sell potentially 18 pages in there. But what I will find out is that my break even might be 7 pages. So if I know that I've got to my 7 pages, you've got that relief then that you're now going to start making money. And so what happens then is you can work out your gross margin if you want to. But, some people's gross margin can be really low. 10%. I was speaking to someone yesterday had a really high gross margin of about 80%, which was amazing. So that just means that after you've broken even, you're making that level of money on everything else. So as soon as you've covered all your costs, then less your direct costs. So if you've got a gross margin of 80%, after break even, you're going to make 80% of whatever else sales you come in is straight down to profit. So it's really, really worth having a look at these figures and making sure you really do understand what your break even is. So then we get to the point where we've got to add the profit on. So in many ways, as a sole trader, what people tend to do is they do all their costs and they forget to do this bit. So they're effectively selling something. They've covered the costs that it's going to cost them to actually produce it, but not their time. So this is where you would be adding that in. So how many, sorry, I've gone pet, there you go. So do you want to earn, do you want to make 5k profit, or do you want to make 50k profit or more? So you need to be looking at this figure, and this is where you would add it in. So you need to then add that to your costs, total costs calculated in step 5, divide by the total sales unit, and then you should be looking now at a final price. Now, this is the point when, for instance, if you're, say, producing bottles of Prosecco, there's a nice idea for a business. No idea how to do it, but I do know how to have a drink of it. So how about you've gone through all your processes and you've added your profit on, and your bottle of Prosecco, you need to sell it at £50. Now, this is when you do a price check, a sense check, really. Are people going to spend £50 on a bottle of Prosecco? Now, they might, but it's probably unlikely when you can go into most supermarkets and buy a bottle of Prosecco, a good bottle, for £10 or less. So you need to have a look at that. Who are your competitors? If you've got something that's absolutely amazing and there's a big story and there's a value, and you've got a premium brand, you might be able to sell something at a higher price. But invariably, we're not selling anything that's massively different. You obviously know that you'll be brilliant and it's a great product, but in essence, it's still a bottle of Prosecco and it's going to get drunk and then it's gone. So you need to make sure you've done that price check. So at this point, I'd go back through to the 4 C's and look at what you've put down there and see, how you think that's going to pan out with your market. Profit is power. And profit is a direct result of your pricing strategy. So if you don't get your pricing right, then your profits are going to suffer. If I'm selling something at £10 and it costs me £9 to make, and I've not factored anything more, I'm making £1 profit. Now, that's not a massive amount, but that might be enough if you've got a really big sort of turnover of products. But if I've not worked out that, and it's, in fact, I find out it's £10 for me to get that £10 product, nothing is coming through and nothing is making a profit. So I've just I've gone backwards. Sorry, here we go. So here's an example of how, when you know your price, I've not put loads of figures into this presentation because I know it can be quite off-putting, but I have got quite a lot of things that I can share with you afterwards. And I've got also an offer to do with you later if you want a little bit of help with this. So imagine you're selling something at £100 and the cost of that item is 50. So you've now got a £50 gross profit. The fulfillment cost is £10. So in fact, you would add that into your cost of sale. So you've now got 60. Interesting here, we've got advertising and marketing. Now, most accountants will put this below the line. And when I say below the line, I mean in the fixed costs, the overheads. And there's a real, sort of rule of different ideas on this. But one of the sort of new ways of thinking about this is that you actually put your advertising and marketing above the line, because this helps you to be able to scale your business. It's really knowing then that obviously the idea being the more advertising and marketing you do, the more sales you get. So therefore, if you know that for every £20 spent, you're getting, say you've invested £2,000 and you then get 20 leads and then 10 of them become clients, you then just know you need to keep doing more and more of the £2,000. So it's an interesting one, and certainly one worth looking and talking to your accountant about. And then you've got your overhead. So there you've got a net profit of £5. Now, by knowing this figure, you've then got the chance. So I've lost my ability to flick on. Oh, there we go. What happens if if I said to you, do you want to double your profits? I'm sure you would. But you might think you've got to double your sales to do that, and you don't. Look at this. By adding £5 onto your sales price, we've actually doubled the profit, because nothing has changed in the costs. It still costs the same amount. It still costs the same amount to fulfill. You still spent the same on advertising and marketing, and your overheads haven't changed. So can you see the power of understanding your figures? A very small increase like that can make double your profits. So it's really, really important that you understand these figures. So there are other pricing strategies. We've got market price. So that's like the bottle of Prosecco. You might just find there's a going rate and people are not willing to really spend much more than that. So you then have to work backwards from that to make sure you're actually covering your costs and you've got your profit in there. Price cutting. Now this is, you see this with some of the big stores where they won't be beaten on price. So they make sure it's low because they want to get more market penetration. So this isn't necessarily something that most small business owners would be looking to do, because it's unlikely that we can compete with the sort of big boys and their sort of low pricing strategies. But for them, that's about having more of the market. So it's just, the additional turnover for them. They'll probably have a much lower gross margin, but they've got more sales. So it's definitely a pricing strategy, but not one that I think most of us would be looking to do. Price skimming, that's an interesting one. That's where you would price high for people who are willing to pay the higher price. So you see that when, you know, people say, oh, people aren't buying things. God, yes, they are. They're buying premium brands. They're buying the Range Rovers at the very high price. You know, people still buy Chanel and, you know, high price skin creams and stuff like that because there's a value. So there's a brand there that they're quite happy to trust. And that sort of crosses into perceived value pricing. So someone like Apple, you know, if you're a fan of Apple, and they definitely create fans as opposed to customers, I think once you have any sort of Apple products, you tend to go and buy all of the different ones if you need that product. The pricing really is almost immaterial to the real super fans because they're going to buy it anyway. So, and they value it because they value the brand and they know it's going to be good and they know the kind of things they can expect. Target costing is pricing, is where you might have, say, a product already and then you are going to do another product and you're just going to match the pricing. So you've already decided if it's a chocolate bar, you've already got 3 chocolate bars, they're all £1. Your next one is going to be £1 as well. So you go backwards and work on your pricing like that. So I've got some sales pricing top tips. And I'm racing through this, so we may finish a little early. It's much, much easier to lower your price after a launch than increase it. Now, one of the things that I find that so many people is it's, you know, you can change your price. It doesn't have to stay the same. But if you start low and then you realise you've got it wrong, it's a lot tougher. So I find this particularly a good example is when you, in the magazine world, you get somebody who comes to you and go, oh, I'm a new business, could you give me a discount? And, you know, if you're feeling kind, you might do it. I don't. I value pricing for loyal customers. But you may decide to do that. It is such a struggle to then get them to the real price. So you may say for your first 3 months, yes, I'm happy to give you a discount. And then come to month 4, you put it to the price it should have been. And guess what? They don't want to pay it. So you've got to be really careful with things like that. And just, you know, you can set the price and you can reduce it if you need to, if you feel like it's not working. So it's much easier to do it that way around. The thing that was really key for me is don't underprice yourself. And I had one business that I spoke to, it was a lovely lady, great product, really good ethical reasons that she was doing what she was doing. And she thought her business was going well. And when we got down to the figures, she was effectively paying herself £3 an hour. So, you know, I said, you know, would you come and work for me for £3 an hour? And it was, of course, no. So why would you want to work for yourself for that? So it's just really key. I know that in the beginnings of a business, you can end up working much longer hours and you're putting all that effort in to get things set up. That's fine. We all understand that potentially needs to happen. But really make sure that you've thought through all the pricing and that actually what you need to price your product at is something that people are going to be willing to pay. So as I just explained with that other example, sales price is the single easiest way to increase your profits from day one. There's a great example, as you know, as an Entrepreneur Circle coach, there's lots of training, if you remember, in the vault. And one of the very simple things that Nigel, who runs Entrepreneur Circle, did with a lady who had a subscription business was just increase the monthly rate. And it was, for them, I think the product, say it was £40, she put it up to £44. You know, it is not a big increase for somebody to look at and think, oh my God, I can't now afford that extra £4. But because of the level of people she had on subscription, that was the single difference that she needed to do what she wanted with her business. She'd set a target of money that she wanted to take out. And it was as simple as that. And I think sometimes through a bit of fear of figures, we often don't look at these things because we think it's too complicated. And actually, sometimes it can be really, really simple. Always keep an eye on your competitors and see what they're doing. But just remember that you will not know, rare that you would know all their costs. So they may be pricing a bit more than you or a bit less than you, and try and understand why they may be doing that. So don't just copy what someone else is doing. And sometimes being more expensive than your competitor is actually a selling tool itself, because you can show that you've got a better product, or you could give more value. You know, if you're a photographer and you book a session with somebody, and they pay a base price and they get 10 images free at the end of that, but your other nearest competitor only gives them 2, you know, you can make sure you focus on the things that you're doing better or differently to make sure people understand your costs. And the other thing on that is, it's this whole concept of actually expecting customers to come to you because of your price. I would be saying you should be looking at the value you're giving them, and make sure that they see the value and not the product price. Because, you know, we all know that you can buy, as I say, a coffee in a cheap cafe or a coffee in a more expensive one, and people will still buy the more expensive one. But that's because there's that, maybe it's a nicer property, there's some lovely flowers in the garden, whatever it might be, but something that makes you happy to not think about the fact you're paying 3 times as much for a very similar product. So that's where we're getting the value in. And that's obviously understanding your business well and knowing what you're actually trying to sell. A good idea, again, is offer a couple of different products at different prices. You know, again, this, you know, we can have this sort of, you see now with memberships, with courses, like now today, you're on this workshop, it's free. So hopefully I establish some sort of connection with people. You see something that I've said that you think you want some help with, that's free. You might then potentially buy a short course from me, which will probably be priced at about £30. So not too big, but you've already seen me and maybe you think, oh yeah, that might be interesting. And then potentially there could be another product, and then there might be coaching. So you wouldn't necessarily want to get someone from this free workshop direct to paying for coaching. So with the magazines, obviously you can buy an 1/8 of a page, or you can go all out and have a double page spread. The difference in price is quite huge, and it's not necessarily relevant for all people who might have an 1/8 of a page to go and spend that much on a double page spread. But I find that, you know, something like a school who's promoting their open days is not going to take an 1/8 of a page ad. It'll have no impact. They won't be able to put barely anything in there. So they're the ones that take the double page spread certain times of the year. A garden designer who just wants to say, look at my website, may well do the 1/8 of the page. But what I've got different price products for people to buy. And so it means that you can get somebody in to your funnel, potentially on the cheaper end of the range, and you've got the opportunity then to keep them, nurture them, and possibly then sell something of a higher value. Next one's a bit of an interesting one, because you think, well, why would you offer the same product at different prices? Now we see this when, if you say you're selling some, you know, lovely pork pies or gorgeous cheeses, and you go to a farmer's market, there's absolutely no doubt that people are willing to spend more money on those products, particularly if it's got the sort of artisan kind of presentation, than they would if they were going just into their local supermarket. So you could be offering those products at a premium price because you're at the farmer's market, and they may be then cheaper to buy direct from you. Or they might be even stocked in another shop at a less price. You've got to be a bit careful, because you need to sort of make sure that you're potentially pitching those at different people. So the people at the farmer's market, they like to go and have a browse and maybe a taste of something, and then they'll buy at that price because they feel like they're getting something a bit more, the chat to you, understanding how you've produced it, whatever it may be. So that's another way of looking at that. It's not always just one price fits all. So once you've got your price set, make sure you regularly review it. This is something that so many people, I see it quite often with some of my colleagues in the magazine world, is they're scared to put the prices up. Now, you don't always have to put them up. You could put them down. But the reason to review your prices is because your costs may have changed. So we all know with the last 18 months how if you want to try and get a builder to do any work, cement prices have gone up. It was hard to get new fences. There's all sorts of things that were changing on price because of the lockdowns and Brexit as well. So, so if you were a person who's costed someone's garden, for instance, that included those products, you'd have to review your prices because of the changes in the cost to you. Or if you don't do that, that's where your gross margin gets reduced and your profit can dwindle down to zero. There may be a good reason for you to lower your price. It's not something that I see people do that often as a pricing strategy, but there may be something. You may have just got an amazing deal with somebody, you can do something a lot more cheaply. So, and that could then be a wonderful way of relaunching and showing your product to people again. You might find that your competitors' pricing has changed, and then that's something that you want to reflect in yours. Excuse me. Maybe their prices have gone up a lot, and you decide that actually you're happy keeping your prices where they are, because that can be a bit of a strategy for you. But I think the underlying theme through all this is making sure these are decisions that are made and not things that just happen. So you might find your competitors have just increased their price and you didn't change yours. But if that's the case, you need to know that so you can use that as a sales technique. You might be able to say we're cheaper than the opposition if you want to do that. And another very good reason to review your price is that your pricing strategy may not have been right in the first place. So this is where, when you've started making your sales and you can see that the profit isn't where you want it to be, maybe you got your costs wrong. Maybe you didn't include something that should have been there. So, it's a good thing to go back, have a look at your costs. And this is where reflecting on what's happened is so important. And so many businesses don't do this until like the year end. It's too late. You need to be looking at this regularly. And there's going to be a really great workshop coming up soon, which is about knowing your numbers and understanding what you should be looking at, and it's for indicators to know where your business is going. So really, really make sure you're keeping an eye on these things. Don't have to be fancy. It just needs reviewing. So if you think that your widget that you're selling at £10 is costing you £5, and you go back and look at the last quarter and you find in actual fact it's £6, you've got to recognise you've reduced your gross margin. Now that might be okay. There may be some other savings you've got, but it's again, knowledge is power. Make sure you understand why, and then you can make your decisions as whether you want to increase your price. So yeah, that's what to do. So, oh gosh, I've whizzed through. So in summary, start with your research. So if you're a brand new business, clearly this is where you would be starting. But even if you're a business that's been going for a while, you can still go back and do some research now if you've not done any, or if you feel that when you did it, times were different. You can imagine how many businesses now, if you did your research, could look like a really, really good bet because of COVID, versus ones that actually you would think, no, I wouldn't do that in a million years because of COVID. So again, things change, and it is well worth revisiting research you have done, or look at doing some new stuff. Consider the 4 market influences, go through the 4 C's and have a look and read through those, and make sure that you've had to think about those areas and made some notes. Do make sure you calculate your break-even point. I mean, there's just no point in carrying on in business if you don't know how many magazine adverts you've got to sell, how many widgets you've got to sell, how many photograph bookings you need to get in, how many clients you need if you're going to coach, what do you need it to do. It's just working in the dark if you don't have that figure. And remember, by having that knowledge, you've got that wonderful, hopefully, time when you get to break even, and you know that everything coming in after that is almost pure profit, depending on what your gross margin is. I absolutely love, I use a wonderful system called Mag Manager, which is a bespoke system for magazine owners. And it does little, I can get things to my phone when I've had a sale, and it will do like a lovely noise going like, hooray. I love that because it keeps me involved in the figures. And I think if you're involved in the figures, you're involved in your business, and you've got the opportunity to change things if you need to. But if you leave all your numbers because you feel like you're not a numbers person, or you don't think you're very good at it, if you sort of leave that to your accountant or to the end of the year, you could be going for a whole year having a problem and not really knowing about it. So, it's really, really important to get this stuff right. Look at the different pricing methods. The one I've just mentioned might not necessarily be the right one for you. So have a look through them and maybe have a play around and see what you think is going to work best for you. But if I had one thing to say to everybody, it is don't underprice yourself. I know that, if you were out in the real world working for someone else and you get paid 40 grand a year, you might not be able to get that straight away in your own business. But you certainly won't get it if you don't have that knowledge of how to get there. You may be quite happy that you've got some flexibility, you work less days, you can work around your kids or caring for a parent, whatever it might be. So it's not always about what you're going to earn. You've got other reasons that are there, but you really do need to make sure you understand your figures. And speak to your accountant if you've got one. A good accountant will help you with these things. They will go through this and make sure that you're priced correctly. But don't leave it till the end of the year. And if you're just starting out in business, this is one of the things that I'm going to offer now, is I'd like to offer a free pricing review. I'm going to limit it to 4 people for the moment, just because I've got quite a busy schedule in the next month or so. But if you'd like me to have a look at your numbers, obviously it'd be confidential. I'll be just doing it so I can take you through where you're at and maybe just check that you have actually got all the right things in there and that possibly you've got your pricing right. If anyone would like to do that, just say in the chat that you'd like to do it, and I will make a note of that and get in touch with you. And the other thing that I'd just like to mention is that as a member of Entrepreneurs Circle, which I've been a member for like 11 years, there is so much information, not only on your marketing your business, which is the main sort of premise of EC, but on understanding your numbers, understanding how many leads you need to get to a client, pricing, everything. A lot of the things I've said here today is said in even more detail and even better than I can do. And there's a really, really great series that has been done by Nigel with 2 wonderful accountants, Kim Marler and John Davies, who I know both very well, and Kim is my accountant. And so if you ever decide that you want to be a member, or you are already a member, you've not looked at these things, please do go and do that. And if you'd like to have a peek and see what I'm talking about, I'm going to put a link in the chat in a moment. You can sign up for EC for 3 months for free. And if you do that at the moment, you can also then go to our new EC local meetings. I'm the ambassador of the one in Dulwich, but they're all around the country. I think there's about 102 meetings. So you get the chance to network, but also do things like this. So at the meetings, we're actually doing a bit of learning. We'll be taking you through some of the things that you need to know in business. Now, some of them you might already be doing, but hopefully there's always something that you can learn. So I'm going to put that link in. And, if you do decide to do that, you've got 3 months and there's so much in there. So make sure if you do decide to join, do it when you've got some time to put some effort in, because there's a lot there. And then hopefully if you find it useful and wonderful, you can join, which would be great. So I've mentioned the pricing review, 4 places. You can either email me, angela@angelaburgess.co.uk, or as I say, put your link in the chat. So I've whizzed through a little bit, never quite work out exactly what my time is going to be like, as this is a new workshop, I've not done it before, but I'm going to go off the the screen share now, and I'm going to get to see you guys. There we go. Nice to see you. And I'm going to have a quick look at the chat. And if anyone has got a question, either put your hand up, or you can put your little reaction thing up which puts your hand up, and I'm very happy to have a go at answering any questions. But I'm going to have a quick look at the chat first and see if I've got some who want to review. Lovely. Okay. Okay. Oh, that's great. You've been introducing yourself to each other. If you haven't done that, please do that. Wonderful. I've got some there. So in the chat now, I've just put in the link if you want to have a look at EC. There's loads of information there that will tell you what that's all about. Jan, have you got your hand up? Do you want to?
Yes.
Yeah, there you go, Jan. How can I help you?
The tricky thing I'm finding is I'm having to go VAT registered again, and how do you sort of introduce that to these?
I'm glad you asked that one, Jan, because it's a really good one.
Yeah.
Quite often people are businesses, when they're getting up to that threshold, hold themselves back because they think it's a problem.
That's what I mean.
And actually, invariably, you take the leap, you go for it, and it won't be a problem. Not all the businesses you will be dealing with. Jan's also a fellow magazine owner, but not all the people you deal with are not VAT registered. So there'll be a certain amount of businesses it will have no problem with at all. They won't even notice it. So I remember when I had to do this, I did, when I went VAT registered, I did also increase the amount of magazines I did. So I did a little extra thing there. I put my prices up sort of in one go to have extra for the increase in the magazines, and also the VAT just went on. So I kind of did it all in one big go. And I didn't lose a single client from it. Because the thing is, when you really think about it, if someone's booking a page from you at £100 and it's working for them, £20 more on that is not really going to be a big difference. The problem is when people don't know if something's working and they don't believe in the value of it.
Yeah.
So I think it's one of those things you just have to do it.
I did do it before years ago, and then went through a sort of poor patch in the magazine and thought, I think I'll deregister. So I deregistered about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And then over the last few years, since I started back after COVID, it's been going so well, because I took a lot of time out over the first lockdown to revamp all my admin.
Yeah.
And it's certainly paying off, or the times are changing or whatever. And it's been doing really well. And I've been pondering whether to cut it down to 10 issues a year so I don't have to pay VAT. And then I thought,
I just think, unless you're looking to do less work, if you've got a reason to go down to 10 because you want time off, then that's absolutely fine. But the way I would be looking at it is, you've just managed to do something at a time which has been really horrible for so many people. You've taken time out, you've reflected, you've improved your systems, and it's paying off. To me, to not go on and push forward feels quite negative. So
to be honest, even with 10 issues, I think I'd still hit that thing. Well, so it would only keep me going for a few months.
Yeah. So I would turn it the other way around, and I would be going to your clients and I'd be just saying, since lockdown, we've had a revamp of the business. We're delighted that everybody is behind us. The magazines are more popular than ever. And it means we've now got to register for VAT. I'm sorry that for some of you this will be a cost, but I hope you can understand, as a business that's thriving in a difficult time, we want to take this leap and keep the business moving forward. Show it as a real positive step.
Yeah.
And then on a case-by-case basis, if you get anybody coming to you that you want to, give them a discount to allow for it, because for whatever the reason might be, that's your choice. But I would just use it as a really positive step
The thing is, with the magazines, you can go onto this flat rate VAT.
Yes, you can, and it's well worth doing that.
Well, obviously, because our huge cost is the print, and that's not VAT.
Exactly. You can go if you're well, obviously it will be, because we're talking about that, up to 150. It's roughly, and don't quote me. Do check this with your accountant. If you have a turnover of up to 150,000, you can go on the flat rate scheme. But once you're on it, before that 150, you can stay on it up to 250,000.
Oh, right. Well,
but if you start at 160, you can't go on it. You have to get on it beforehand. Yeah. And that's really good for you. It won't change anything for your customers, but it will be good for you. And it could then give you a little bit of a margin to offer the discount to the person that you might want to. So I've turned it around, massively positive, show how well you do.
You have to give. How does it, do I, because it will happen almost immediately as soon as it will happen immediately once I register. So do I give them notice now, like in the next issue, or rather just contact them?
You give people notice. I think the worst thing you can do is just register for VAT and then send someone a bill with the VAT without saying. I think this is where I think you've got an opportunity to have a nice connection with your customers. You can thank them for their support. You can say, because of your support, I've come back. It's bigger, it's better, it's wonderful, and also because of that, I'm having to go VAT registered. And just totally
positive thing now.
Yeah, and Jan, if you want to ping me an email with what you want to say and have a look over, I'd be very happy to.
Okay, thank you.
But again, it's sometimes something that you're scared of is actually the thing that is the real selling point. If I got that, you'd be thinking that's brilliant. Okay, you might not think it's brilliant, you're paying 20% more, but everyone loves a success story. So that's what I'd be doing.
No, you're absolutely right. I hadn't thought of that.
Well, the thing is, often you don't think of it because you're in the middle of it, and that's why.
It's so obvious now you've said it, but it wasn't before.
But that's why having someone to talk to about these things, that's like coaching, or you've got business partners, or even just another fellow magazine owner, it's really helpful to do that. So, has anyone else got a question? Everyone's silent. I'm going to have a quick look through the chat, see if anyone said anything. A few people have had to go, that's fine. Please may I have a copy of the slides. If it's helpful, I will send out a recording of the workshop, and I'll send the slides with them. So so you've all got them. If you don't want them, that's fine, but at least I've made sure everyone's got them there. So anyway, well, thank you so much all for coming. Is anyone got an objection if I did a quick screenshot, which I did this the other day and I've forgotten how to do it again. I only did it yesterday and I'm busy, so I've got to remember to also look at the camera and not look like I'm being strange. I think, has that done it? Oh dear, I don't think I've managed to do it. Can anyone remind me what to do on a Mac? Something to do with the tree.
Hi, Angela.
Command 5, isn't it?
Control Command
Shift 3. Control Command 3.
Command Shift 3. I thought it was 5.
I think it's 5.
Oh, hang on. I'm ready. Something. Take the picture.
I do this every day of my life. It's Shift Command 4.
Okay.
And then you drag it. Shift Command 4.
That's 2. No, that's
I'm afraid none of those work. Let's see if I get my little thing. Shift Command 4.
And then you drag out the window. There might be a better way of doing it, but then you just drag out the window.
What is it? It's Command Shift 5.
Oh, yes.
Press Enter.
I'm doing it.
Yeah, I've done it. Command Shift 5.
Oh gosh.
We're all trying to smile at the same time.
Right, I've done it. Brilliant. Right, now I need to Brilliant. Thank you. Right, I'm going to, I think it's since I'm mute you. Right, that's better. That was
Can we
good.
stop smiling?
And Jan, I'm going to mute Jan so I can just finish off. There we go, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you all for coming along. I really appreciate you turning up. I know lots of people sign up and then just wait for the recording, so I appreciate you coming live and seeing your faces and everything. As I said, I'm not an accountant. I'm just a passionate business owner who absolutely loves figures, and I love making a profit. I love what I do, and I love doing these workshops, which I do for free, but I also want to make a profit so I can live a nice life and enjoy doing things like this. So just don't undersell yourself. Make sure you factor in what you want to get out of your life. And as I say, if you're a member of EC, or if you want to talk to me a bit more about really getting to grips with your figures, you know, I'm going to do some of the pricing reviews. And if there's anything else I can help you with, you know where to find me. So I'm going to say goodbye, and I'm going to stay on for a moment because I'm going to just quickly go through the chat. But thank you guys. Have a good rest of the day and a great weekend. Pause.